back to the second episode of the 5710 podcast. This week we've got Joe Morris from Morris+Company. They're London-based practice whose admirable ethos of design is focused heavily around hand drawing, model making, as well as more contemporary visual techniques. The practice were recently awarded both regional and national awards for their project R7 King's Cross, which I'll link to in the kind of description on YouTube. So, hi Joe, how's it going? How was your trip up?
Very well, thank you. Enjoyed the flight. A 1 hour hip hop from London to here. Yeah, super quick. I was actually trying to do the presentation on the flight, so the flight was just a bit too short in some ways. But anyway, all good. I'm all here.
Is that kind of how you manage your time?
Yes. Continuously ad hoc.
Yeah. Quite difficult. Busy practice, and especially in London.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've changed over the last few years where we're trying to make sure that the level of responsibility, the activity, the kind of general kind of output, the direction, all that sort of stuff just gets pushed further down.
Okay.
So more and more people get a chance to, in some way, kind of understand what it is that we're trying to do as a global idea, rather than somehow waiting for people to be told, or for people to be told what the answer is. It's sort of like, well, you tell me what you think it might be, and it's a conversation to be had. So, and interestingly, the point of doing that is it frees up my time to be able to come to Aberdeen and sort of talk to you and do a podcast.
You're involved in quite a few different things, like London On.
Yeah, London On. I'll talk to a little bit about that. I'm not going to dwell too much, but just to give a sense of why it fits in. London On. We've just opened a little office out in Copenhagen. Yeah. We've got little kind of the first few kind of petit pois shoots in Paris, perhaps, that we're sort of exploring, just trying to work out whether or not there's a thing there. We seem to have quite, I don't know how we've done it, but there's a scene, and we seem to be kind of on the horizon of this scene of younger practices looking for maybe it's not a fully established, but someone who has got a credible record that could perhaps twin with them and sort of bring something. So we might bring a bit of concept, and they would be on the ground and getting experience delivering sort of thing. So anyway, all very, very early stuff.
Yeah. To link with the opening of your Copenhagen office, it's been said that this is partially in response to Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be more clear, more accurate, London On is effectively an absolute reaction. It's a program which effectively started the day that we evoked Article 50. So effectively, it's designed to be a 2-year program, albeit Theresa May and all the rest of it, they seem to be pushing this thing like no deal Brexit and whatever that. No one really knows what it means. So in some ways we went into it thinking, well, maybe the idea of London On is to sort of push back and to do the opposite of what Brexit looks like it's doing, which is actually withdrawing and putting up boundaries. We're trying to basically break the barriers down and have a sort of borderless kind of relationship with people. So that was London On. Copenhagen is the reason we have an office in it. It's all about love. And it's purely about this guy, Ed Blake, who's one of our senior team. He's now a director out there, and he fell in love with a Danish girl, and she wanted to move back to Denmark, and he handed his notice in. And just before he left, he and I had a little conversation about what he was doing out in Copenhagen, what his plan was. And he's incredible. This guy is incredible. Like, really, really dear friend, colleague. So much of the drive and the business goes through this guy's absolute meticulous attention to detail and sort of thinking and clarity. So obviously he'd thought about this thing very clearly. But I sort of said to him, what are you doing? He said, I've got no plans. There's no plans. I'm just going to Copenhagen because my girlfriend's going. So I said, we'll set up an office and we'll build an office around you. And we did that, and that's 7 months now. He's been working, and it now has its own legal entity. It's got its own registration. We've got 2 people employed out there, and it's in some ways it's an opportunity to have sort of freedom and license to basically design at a competition level, because there is no work. So we're effectively using it as a competition base, as a sort of Scandinavian. Sort of almost like a doorway into Scandinavia, in no way to take over anything, but more to work and just experience different places. And for a very small version of us, to exist and to do some interesting things and to work with people. And we have a great affinity with the country and with the city. It's a beautiful city.
I went last year and would love to go back.
Yeah, it's so good. In fact, it's my birthday on the 5th of October, and I'm 48, and it's also Ed's birthday on the same day. So it's just this weird sort of alignment of the stars, the cosmos. So I'm going to go out on the 5th. We're going to have beers on the 5th, and I'm going to tour Copenhagen for 4 days, and then sort of travel back and see a few people while we're out there.
Yeah,
so,
that sounds lovely.
It's good. It's good. Yeah.
So in your practice, as I said, you emphasise craft and the design process that could be kind of compared to the university design process that we have here.
Yeah.
How do you handle that in a more commercial setting? It must be quite challenging weighing up costs and times and things like that.
Yeah, it is. I don't have a kind of an algorithm which can sort of define how this might work. But how do we do it? We don't really. I think the profession doesn't make enough money. I don't think there's enough. We were talking about yesterday. It's an interesting question. In some ways that's partly why I'm here today, because I kind of want to somehow have a conversation about why people think that actually, what we do is a sort of craft-based approach.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a kind of fundamental step back from that. So what is it about architecture which leads one to do a craft-based approach? What is what's the first thing?
Mm-hmm.
I think is kind of perhaps more important at this stage. So how do we make it work? It's difficult, and you'll see it's we have this idea that basically you have to make a shitload of errors in order to find a solution, and if you don't make them, you're not really exploring these kind of outer edges. There's so many things that we do. Model making can do shorthand, which again is also terrible. You may as well just sit in front of SketchUp. It's a kind of means it's a kind of mechanism in order to get people to think a bit freely about a thing. But it's not just model making. It's like a whole series of simultaneous activities are taking place. Mm-hmm. Dialogue is massively important. The spoken word, the written word, reading, photography, being on the ground, you picking things up. It's a sort of it's a suite of activities and skills which need to be happening simultaneously. Model making, again, is a mechanism. It's one lens through which to explore a brief. And I guess we think that it yields better results, and you can probably we could probably be more financially successful if finances was important, singularly, build very good buildings, and do all the things which people want to do. The question really is, it will come back to this question of why do you get out of bed in the morning? Mm-hmm. What is it that you're trying to do as a person? So there are architecture is such a generic term. Architects and the methodology and all their background and where you've been schooled and what you've been brought up and how you eat and whether or not you've got a big car or a small car or you fly everywhere or cycle everywhere or all those things will absolutely define you as a person, and how you are defined as a person will affect other people and how you bring people in, and people are generally speaking in your own image in some ways, the people that you kind of generally coagulate to. How do you kind of break that cycle and bring diversity and generosity and richness and contradiction and all those sorts of things, if that's what you're interested in? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I think we're 15-ish years in, and we're still trying to crack that thing, which is like, how do we know what we can do really well. The question is why we're doing it is another sort of maybe more philosophical discussion. How do we make the why and the how perhaps generate a little bit more profitability? But we're profitable and we succeed and we're still here, and we've lived through 2 recessions, one which kind of is still ongoing. So we've proven that you can do it. With Brexit, it might. Who knows? Well, the other way of looking at Brexit, well, maybe the good thing about Brexit is it kind of really, you might see it as a really super extreme, super provocative way of basically working out who's shit and who's good. It might be. Separating the wheat from the absolutely, chaff. Yeah. Suppose good. Yeah. So we're kind of part of the uni here, obviously. So quite a few of our students will be listening. They might be wondering, if they chose to apply for you, what would you be looking for, whether part 1 or part 2, in their, not just their work, but kind of in them as a person as well? Right now, I think I'm interested in people's story. I think the thing about applications for jobs is that people generally sort of say a bunch of things which something along the lines of really like your project, and they'll go on the website and they'll fish a couple of projects out and they'll say we think, or I think your projects are really great, it has something that I like and I'm sort of doing, sort of thing, and I want to get my part 3. Kind of generally speaking, that's kind of what that kind of looks like. And then it's up to us really to work out whether or not through that kind of, I don't know, what's the word, mission statement, or personal kind of characterisation statement or whatever, and the kind of the supporting material, whether or not there's anything in there that you can sort of think, well, there's something there which works for us. And generally, we're not always looking for people, but we're always getting CVs, and often we'll invite people in to talk. And invariably, I don't speak to many people because lots of people. So the difference now is that it's worth knowing for your team is that I pretty much don't select a single person that comes into the office anymore, nor do the directors, nor do the associates. It's a whole office decision. And we basically have part 1s and part 2s. We have our front of house, our admin support people sifting through portfolios continuously. So actually there's a collective idea. Most people get interviewed at least twice. You'll have seen 4 people, and we'll be assessing the kind of weight and strength of proper critical feedback from each of the interviews that take place versus the type of work we've got, the programme of work coming in and going out, and also whether or not, it doesn't necessarily need to be a kind of work thing where it's basically firefighting, but sometimes just finding additional resource and having people sort of floating about, the whole idea of just, serendipity is a kind of interesting thing, just having people just doing stuff around and trying to get that to feed into stuff. So there's no fire way of doing it, but it's definitely sort of try and maybe write something, it's a side, just kind of why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
What is it that's captivated architecture, me, you? Be honest. Don't platitudes are pointless. It's just be really honest. This is what it is. This is where I'm at. I'm interested. I'm not sure. You blah blah blah. Be really honest. And maybe that will work.
Yeah, that sounds good advice.
Cool.
Last 2 questions, and we kind of need to wrap up fairly soon. What's your favourite memory from your architectural career, whether it was in university or in the workplace? Kind of something that really you hold on to as a special.
Wow, that's a really good question. Memories. There's loads of really, really good ones. I think, Again, I feel like it's so. I'm so kind of to type when I respond, but it's the things like Ortus, Kingsgrove, and R7 being widely recognised. But I do think there's something about projects like Ortus and Alfredson School and Richmond Adult Community College, which is kind of an arts wing of it. There's something more than just architecture. There's a story of people in there, and I think with the right people, with the right client, the right project, just wind and sailing in the right direction, magical things can happen. And I think there's some incredible stories of people in our office, clients, stakeholder engagement, the kind of moment of chance encounter, things happening, we're just like, wow, never saw that coming. This is amazing. You can feel yourself kind of riding a crest of a massive kind of Hawaiian wave on a super surfboard. So there's lots of things like that. Lots of, and obviously Stephen Lawrence Award and the importance of that is quite interesting, quite important. And Stephen's mother, who's doing an incredible thing with the charity. I think it's now would have been his 40th birthday this year. And again, that's just an incredible thing that's sort of going on in the background. It's almost lots of people don't really seem to understand that. To the Mansa Medal, to various other things, but continuously, I think actually relaunching as Morris+Company was a big thing as well, and the opportunity to really explore ideas again. This more egalitarian, collegiate approach to work.
Okay. So final one, and this is something we're kind of asking everybody, and then we'll get a big board up. If you could recommend a city or a building anywhere in the world to a student of architecture when they went on a grand tour, what would it be?
From anywhere in the world?
Anywhere you've been to, or anywhere you'd like to go, maybe.
Oh, questions like that. It's not fair. So, we went on a grand tour some years ago where we basically drove across France and we did every building that we could find that Le Corbusier had done. And I would say all of them brilliant. So, you know, Ronchamp, La Tourette, Fimini, Unité, all of them are just stunning buildings and continue to be provocatively difficult as well at the same time, worth a look. Grundtvig, the cathedral in Copenhagen, is a stunning building. Ortus in London by us, I think, would be is a really strong recommendation for a building of its type, because it's doing a special thing, I think, in a sector which doesn't really do stuff like that. Where have I been recently? Did a tour of Barcelona. Barcelona as a city is also an incredible place to look at. Still, Gaudi's work is stunning. It's like you forget just how crazy this stuff is, and just how beautiful and evocative and emotive and, you know, kind of divisive it is as work. Recently, I think, you know, if you were to go right now and you wanted to look at something which was highly controversial, Amin Tahar's office in Clerkenwell in London is a really interesting project. So it's a really simple office and housing development with his apartment on the roof of it, which he got planning for, but the planners have asked him to effectively demolish it on the basis that the final outcome of the building looks slightly different. In fact, there are certain fundamental differences, but at the same time it's still, generally speaking, the same scheme. But there's a kind of an appropriation of material, there's a narrative and lyricism there. It's clearly an incredible building. If you wanted to have a conversation and thought process about the planning system, about taste, about what's right, what's wrong, about truthfulness, about all those subjects which you just take for granted as an architect, that there is a truth in architecture, which is obviously, I think, is nonsense, frankly, then that's the building that's the one to look at. It's the zeitgeist of all those issues.
Okay, that's good.
Great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
As the first ever guest of the 5710 podcast. To
set the bar very high, obviously.
Very high. Hopefully next week Nathan Coley can reach that bar. No chance.
No chance.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening. See you next week.